Hello class, this is sort of a demonstration on how I do my illustrations and how I come up with ideas. So the sumicrast letter, we had to take a letter. Now I chose the letter G and I just started making a list, and you can see, I went with giant and goat and giraffe and gate. And now I didn't just go with nouns. I thought I'll go with some verbs. So I went gobble, which gave me the idea for gobbler. I thought, hey, maybe something with a turkey. Then I thought, oh, goblin. Then gopher, then grunt. Now grunt, you might say, how would I do grunt? Maybe that's going to be like some cavemen you're going to use, like they're going to grunt. Gruel, gruesome, gravel, grovel, gargoyle, goobers, gooey, go-kart. So I'm not censoring my list when I do that. Groceries, geyser. Now, I don't know how I got the geyser, but I got the geyser somehow, which made me think of geezer, which is a slang for an old man. And I thought, hey, that'd be cool to use old men to make my letter. Gyro or gyro, garden, gardenia, gross, gargantuan, grizzly. So I came up with a list of more than 20. There's some that I kind of like on here. I like this geezer idea. I like the goat idea. I'm thinking maybe I could do a goat with a curly horn. Maybe the horn could be the G. I like the goblin. The reason I like the goblin is because goblins don't really have a set look to them. So then what you're going to do is just find some images. So I found some images, and for my goat, I found a picture of a goat like this, and I thought, hey, I could do something, with bringing in this horn around. But now you think, what am I going to do with the rest of the goat? So maybe I do the horn in sort of dark or colors, and maybe I just leave the goat really faded in light and black and white. So really the horn stands out, and there's my G. So that's one way to possibly do a G. Another idea I had was goblin. And not goblin, gargoyles. And I found all kinds of gargoyles. Those are these little statues that are on all these medieval buildings, churches usually. And I found this one and I thought, he doesn't really look like a G, but I could see like bringing his wings way over the top and making his head smaller. I'm not sure I like this head, so I found another picture. I think maybe I'll make a head that has almost like a beak here, not quite as elaborate as this head. So I could do some things with that and work it out. And then as far as goblins, I looked up pictures of goblins. And goblins, there's a huge range. I mean, there's these cartoon goblins like this. Here's kind of a goblin that's kind of cute. And it's got a little helmet on, an earring, and things like that. But they're all kind of mean. Most of them were green. Some were realistic, like Lord of the Rings. Some were very cartoonish and very silly. But what's nice about the goblin, it's sort of like a dragon. A dragon can be drawn so many different ways. Sometimes dragons look like horses. Sometimes they're kind of like dinosaurs or serpents or snakes, or you get your Chinese dragon. And so you got all these different types of things that could be a dragon. So obviously, in order to do a dragon, you may want to look at how other artists have done things. Now, I'm not just going to take this guy. I thought he kind of reminded me of G, the way he curled around here. But obviously, I'd have to really, work on that to get him look like a G. But I don't like all his features. So what I did is I figured, you know what, I'm going to kind of take some of the features from both of these and kind of make up my own character. Okay? So that's how I went about coming up with my idea. So I started with this sketch. And you can see, if I just show you this really quick here, I liked his nose coming out. I want to make his nose a little bit bigger. So I had that nose come out there a little bit further. And then at first his nose was real pointy, and I thought I'd make him a little evil, so I gave a little lump in his nose here. And he's got a real furrowed brow here with a little eye, and maybe just a little bit of an eye peeking over there. Now I like this hat from this one with the spikes on there. So I thought, hey, I'm gonna add some little spikes to some kind of a little helmet up here. Maybe I'll do this kind of a thing and add a little spikes to there. Now when I look at this, I think, it's kind of like a G, but how can I make it more like a G? So maybe the fact that his ear goes out here so far, maybe I want to bring that ear in a little bit, make it a little bit smaller so it doesn't distract from the shape of that G. So maybe I'll do that. Now when I started drawing, I did some really light sketches. You can see my foundation sketch, these really light lines, just kind of sketching where things are. Now I played around with his arm. I noticed on this one, he's got kind of a furry hood. And I thought, hey, I like that hood. Not sure I want to make it furry, but it kind of separates his head from his body here. And his arm, he had a skinny little arm. I figured I gave him just a little bit of a muscle and added a little hook to the end of his arm here. So I'm really kind of making this up as I go along. And you can see when I first start, my drawing is pretty darn messy. Now this particular goblin, he had a sword. I didn't like the way that sword jetted out, so I figured I'd give him a little axe. Now, I don't know, this might be the end of his coat here, and I'm kind of sweeping his leg around. Maybe that's his arm, not sure. And I'm gonna put a little grip on that axe there. Maybe I say, okay, this hand is kind of coming into the way here. Maybe I wanna make this a little more circular. So I'm gonna bring that hand down a little bit. So I'm just gonna do this and maybe bring that down into here so it doesn't really interrupt with this curve that's going in here. So you can see this is how I go about working on my ideas, okay? So he's got a big mouth. All the goblins that I saw had a lot of teeth in their mouths. So I'm gonna go with that sort of evil looking grin with the teeth, and I'm gonna do this. Now I don't necessarily have to fill it all in, but I'm gonna be using this later. And when I get this like ready for my, to work on, to get into the computer. So a couple things you can do with the computer. You can see this one, if I compare it to my hand, it's pretty small. So I'm gonna wanna get it much bigger on a sheet like this. Okay, now rather than redrawing it, okay, I'm just gonna photograph it, bring it to the computer, and then in the computer, I can go in and erase things, I can clean it up. And if you want to try something, what you can do on the computer, you could put another layer on and try a different axe here over the top. And if you like it, keep it. If you don't, then just get rid of that layer. So anyhow, I'm going to work on my drawing and kind of finalize it and get it looking good. And then I'm going to decide what am I going to use this for. Is this going to be done in the computer? Is it going to be done with watercolors? Am I going to go watercolor and pen? I'm going to make this ear a little darker here. So really I'm doing is I'm just finalizing my drawing here and doing all my sketches. And you can see I start pretty loose and I just clean up my sketch as I go. I need to work on this hand a little bit more and maybe the arm. Maybe I like this one's got kind of tattered or ripped up clothing. So maybe I do something like that. Maybe I give him a little bit of a sleeve here and maybe his clothing is a little bit ripped up like that. So you can see some of the things that I'm gonna try here. So I just keep working, use my eraser, adding things, moving things around, and you can do this on the computer. You can do it in the sketchbook. I love the sketchbook because it's so much easier. You got everything you need to do here. So eventually I'm gonna get that cleaned up. And then I'm going to use this. I think I'm gonna do this one in watercolors. So what I'm gonna do is photograph it, bring it in the computer, and then print it so it's larger. So it takes up more space like this one does on the sheet. So a much larger G, okay? Then I'm gonna take that and I'm gonna slide a piece of watercolor paper over the top of it on the light box and really lightly trace it. And then I'll show you later how to get going on that. Now, one other thing, rather than just putting it on watercolor paper, and once you get a transfer the watercolor paper, rather than just starting with the watercolors, in your sketchbook, you can paint watercolors on this guy just to kind of practice. So once you get them transferred, you could practice. You might say, I'm gonna throw some green here and blue or whatever, and then maybe I'm gonna take my pen and try some textures on him and see if I like it. Once I kind of decide, hey, I like the way this looks, then I'm going to then go on my good sheet of watercolor paper and start working on it that way. All right, here's the illustration of the goblin. I did a few changes on it. Instead of, I decided to make it look like he's got sort of a tail here grabbing this little axe, fix the axe a little bit, change the wrist. Did a few changes to this. You can see compared to my hand, it's a pretty small drawing. So then what I did is I photographed it, sent it to my computer, downloaded it on Photoshop, and then on Photoshop, I made sure I darkened in some of the lines. And then what I did is I printed it because I wanted it to be bigger because this is a regular size sheet of paper and I want it to be pretty big. So I printed it so it was larger on that sheet of paper. Then what I did is I took a sheet of watercolor paper like this and I placed it, this underneath it on a light box and traced it. Now you're gonna trace it really lightly. My lines are a little darker than probably you wanna do, and I only made them darker just so you could see my drawing a little bit better. Now I'm gonna proceed to use watercolors on here. So I'll have a test strip to test my colors on, and I'm gonna proceed to use watercolors on this. So that's the next step.